Ah, so that's what it was, as I glimpsed at my in-laws' house from a distance. The moment I touched upon the truth, I was speechless. What had Tad and his family been thinking when they looked at Violet all this time? How many times had they deceived Violet with a calm face? Unforgivable. I will make sure you all fall to hell no matter what. My name is Scarlett. I'm 45 years old, struggling with a zipper around my stomach on my ceremonial clothes that I haven't worn in a long time. I thought I hadn't changed much in appearance since my younger days, but clearly I've accumulated visceral fat. I first wore this outfit when I was 30. My younger sister Violet, who had a weak heart since childhood, passed away at the young age of 27. She died of heart failure after complications from pneumonia. Miraculously, I was the only one who had a conversation with Violet on her last day, as I happened to visit her in the hospital. She had only been married for 2 years. She must have had so many things she wanted to do. She couldn't have imagined leaving this world like this. Remembering Violet's smile, saying she wanted to walk under the autumn leaves after being discharged, filled me with a heavy heart. On the day of the funeral, still unable to accept the tragedy that befell my dearest sister, an incident occurred. It was just before the ceremony started. I went to the bathroom, and there was Tad, Violet's husband, talking on the phone in a nearby rest area. Yeah, I think things will settle down a bit after the funeral and the 49th day memorial service. Yeah, well, I guess I should keep it low until the first anniversary. I normally don't eavesdrop on people's phone calls, but this time I couldn't help but be concerned. What does he mean by keeping it low until the first anniversary? That's surely about Violet's. Tad's casual tone didn't seem like a conversation with a colleague. All the in-laws were attending the ceremony. Who was he talking to? Sorry to keep you waiting. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, no, the kid is fine. They haven't figured it out yet. Neither Violet nor her family have any clue that I have a child. Just stay relaxed at home. I was stunned. Did he just say he has a child? Violet and Tad didn't have children. They chose not to because of uncertainties about Violet's health during pregnancy. They were both in their first marriages, and we had never heard anything about Tad having a child. What on earth is going on? Honestly, Tad's incomprehensible conversation only confused me, and I couldn't gather my thoughts. But then I suddenly remembered the words Violet desperately tried to tell me just before she was taken to the operating room. Parents home, a child soon after. Violet lost consciousness and passed away without waking up again, so I never heard the rest, and I was the only one who heard those words until now. The shock of losing Violet was too great, and I didn't have the capacity to consider the meaning of her words. But the words parents home from Violet and Tad's, just relax at home. If it was the house they lived in, Violet would have said home, not parents' home, and there are no children at our parents' home. Thinking about it, I realized something. Could it be that the person on the phone is Tad's child or living at Tad's parents' home? Once this thought struck me, I couldn't stay still. If this was true, I couldn't forgive Tad. Eager to verify my suspicion, I left the funeral home right after laying the flowers for Violet and headed straight to Tad's parents' home. Tad's parents' home is within walking distance of the house where Violet and he lived. Tad himself said he wanted to live in this area because I'm an only child and my parents are elderly, so I want to live near them. Violet, though living near her in-laws, often expressed her concern, saying, I'm worried whether we can manage with the increased family interactions. But in reality, they hardly ever visited and had almost no family interaction. Perhaps that's why at the funeral, Tad's parents hardly seemed to war in Violet's passing. I was a bit appalled at how they were constantly fiddling with their mobile phones. Well, if their relationship was distant, perhaps this is to be expected, but they could have hidden their true feelings a bit more at such a time. Thinking about their attitude, I hesitated to ring the doorbell at Tad's parents' home. Normally no one should be in the house. Everyone should be at Violet's funeral. But what if someone comes out? What should I say? I still had no evidence of Tad's infidelity. Facing an enemy in a state of insufficient information, I wasn't confident I could win. While pondering, I sneaked around to the garden and peeked inside the house. The windows were open, and I could see inside clearly. What if someone's really there? I was startled at that moment. Wait, don't run around, come here. Don't be wild. A child who had just come out into the garden, making a commotion, was followed by an unfamiliar woman. I quickly hid and watched the two of them from the shadows. The child's face looked a lot like Tad's. His steps were still unsteady. He must have started walking just a few months ago. The woman was about the same age as Tad. The area around her mouth indeed resembled the child's, making it clear that she must be the mother. Ah, did that man truly betray Violet? Since when? When did Violet realize it, though? The puzzle pieces in my mind fit neatly, but more troubling thoughts emerged and I couldn't feel any relief. Instead, tears started to form. I won't forgive him. In Violet's place, I will definitely bring that man down to hell. I vowed to do so. Later, I returned to the funeral home and received Violet's canes. Everyone suspected me for leaving the ceremony, but they seemed convinced when I said I couldn't stay there due to the shock of losing Violet. I was relieved that no one seemed to suspect that I went to Tad's parents' home. I didn't want Tad or the in-laws to harbor any strange doubts. The next day, I immediately decided to hire the only investigation service in the area to investigate Tad, and it turned out to be run by Violet's friend, Riley. I remembered her well since she attended the funeral. Riley revealed that Violet had also hired her company to investigate her husband. After I told him the results of the investigation, Violet felt ill and passed away. I have a duty of confidentiality, but she loved you very much, Scarlett, so I think she would forgive me for telling you. Riley then explained the background and results of the investigation. Violet had requested it. Once Violet and Tad almost broke up during their engagement. The cause was Tad's so-called cold feet. With the wedding application done and only half a year left until the wedding, he said, "I'm not so confident I can protect Violet with her weak heart. I want some distance." Violet, after much thought, agreed to his request, and they took a break. But after about 2 months, Tad came back, apologized, and said he wanted to marry Violet after all, so they smoothly proceeded to the wedding. After that, Tad, who had caused Violet so much trouble, said he wanted to give her a house in the future and worked tirelessly, even on holidays. Thanks to all this, it seemed that Violet and Tad's time together had greatly reduced. But Violet spoke of it as if it were something sweet, saying, "We'll be fine, won't we?" I thought of it fondly, but actually Tad had started an affair with a childhood friend, Nova, soon after his engagement to Violet. Though they had dated before, they broke up over trivial disagreements. He later met and got engaged to Violet, but Tad was still hung up on his childhood friend. Then, after the affair rekindled through contact from her, they resumed their illicit relationship. Moreover, his cold feet was a lie. Around that time, Nova became pregnant, and Tad, torn about divorcing Violet and marrying her, had apparently confided in some friends. The mistress insisted, "I won't ask for marriage as long as you stay with me, but I will have this child." He didn't want to leave her, nor did he want to tell Violet, his lawful wife, about the outside child. He couldn't deny the child of a woman he loved. She was adamant about having the child despite his wish against it. Tad, unable to find a way out and troubled, consulted his parents. Shockingly, they said, "It's our first grandchild. Let her have it." His parents had always preferred Nova, whom they knew well from childhood, over Violet. Moreover, they seemed displeased with Violet and her family, often complaining about not being able to see grandchildren. Fortunately, Violet is frail. She'll pass away soon, then acknowledge the child and remarry Nova. The mistress wholeheartedly agreed to this outrageous plan. For Tad, it was a favorable proposition. Convinced by his parents' words, he agreed to let Nova have the child. Nova, an only child like Tad, had lost her parents. Thus, Tad's mother and father frequently stayed at the mistress's house, taking care of her before and after the birth. Tad's claims of working on weekends right after marrying Violet were false. He was likely visiting his newborn child. Neighborhood witnesses claimed to have seen Tad frequently visiting Nova's house. It seems the move, supposedly for his elderly parents' concern, was a lie, more about being close to seeing his child. As the child grew to see the grandparents' growth up close, they spent more time at Tad's parents' home, as per the in-laws' wishes. Hence, coming up with various reasons, he kept Violet away from the in-laws' house, resulting in no visits at all. It's appalling how the family condoned the affair. Violet only discovered Tad's infidelity about a month ago. Feeling unwell, Violet had come home early from work and was sleeping. Tad probably didn't realize Violet was there. Normally, Tad hardly ever messaged or called in front of Violet, but on this day, he returned home a bit earlier than usual and made a phone call. "Somewhere, I got off work early. Can I come over now?" Violet, she's at work, so she won't find out. She's been falling ill easily lately and goes to bed early. I'll just say I'm working overtime and stay longer." "Yeah, I also want to live with Nova and the others soon. Every time she's sick, I keep hoping it won't be long." Violet, lying in her sickbed, heard this. "The pain in my heart is unimaginable. Just thinking about what she must have felt." The incident led Violet to realize Tad's infidelity and hire her friend Riley's investigation service. The investigation results were out, and just as she was about to confront Tad with divorce, she collapsed and never returned. After telling everything, Riley said, lowering her eyes, "Violet must have been so frustrated." Lowered her eyes exactly. "I want to avenge Violet's grudge. I couldn't let the in-laws get the grandchild and Tad remarry. But just grasping the situation, I didn't know what to do." After some thought, an idea struck me. "Riley, are you good with computers?" At my words, Riley smiled and answered, "Leave it to me." The next day, I had into Tad's parents' home when I rang the doorbell. Mother-in-law appeared surprised. "Oh, Scarlett, what brings you here?" "I have something to discuss about Violet's belongings with the family. Is now a good time?" Mother-in-law went silent. Then the press vanished. Maybe they won't let me in. Well, I was a bit anxious and waiting. "Sorry, Scarlett, I was just tidying up. Please come in." Tad appeared. "Oh, Tad, you're here. That's good." My smile made Tad's expression stiffen. He thinks I'm unaware of his affair, but his guilty face says otherwise. In fact, I had just seen the mistress and child through the window. He must have tidied up them. Wonder which room they're in. As I was ushered into the room, the in-laws and Tad looked at me uneasily. Right after sipping the coffee they offered, reading the atmosphere, Tad asked, "What about Violet's belongings?" "Oh, yes, this," I said, placing a photo on the table. Seeing the photo, Tad and the in-laws froze. "Dad, who is this woman?" No, I don't know her." In the photo, Tad and a woman were embracing in bed. This was sent to our house recently, suggesting Tad's infidelity. At my words, the in-laws glared at Tad, and he frantically shook his head. "Wait, I don't remember this photo," Tad exclaimed. I watched Tad's reaction as I produced more photos. Each photo showed Tad kissing the woman or dating at a nearby amusement park. "People who cheat don't say, 'I remember,'" I murmured with downcast eyes. Mother-in-law raised her voice. You are just unbelievable." "Different, Mom. I don't know anything about this." "Lies. Then what are these photos about? You have a child with Nova, don't you?" "Child?" I quickly reacted to mother-in-law's words. Father-in-law opened his mouth awkwardly. Is this child the one you're talking about?" "Then is this woman Nova?" I said, presenting a photo of Tad holding a child. "No!" The in-laws were at a loss for words, and Tad repeatedly yelled, "It's not true!" But mother-in-law, this worst son, slapped Tad's cheek. "Did you have another child? Listen to me, Mom, Dad." However, mother-in-law and father-in-law didn't listen and repeatedly berated Tad for betraying their beloved grandchild. "What are you doing bringing these false photos here?" "I don't really understand either. They were sent to my house. So, Tad, you have a child?" I glared sharply at Tad, who was at a loss for words. Well, honestly, Tad is right. Tad doesn't have another mistress besides Nova. I have no intention of telling them, as I don't want to be accused of defamation later. But these photos are composites that I had Riley make for me. I could have used actual photos of the real mistress and child, but I chose composites for a specific reason. I intended to press them about the child's existence and make them accidentally reveal the truth. But mother-in-law slipped up and spoke sooner than I expected, which was lucky. "Your silence means it's true, right?" Earlier, Penelope also mentioned a child, and Nova didn't, did she? Tad was frozen, and then mother-in-law and father-in-law too as I continued. The information sent said these children are being cared for in this house. That's not true. Mother-in-law interrupted my words with a denial. Is that so? There's no way something so absurd could be true. Then show me every room in the house. Without waiting for anyone's permission, I stood up and headed to the next room. Wait, don't just pry into someone's house. Tad raised his voice. If there's nothing to hide, just show me. Don't worry, I don't mind a bit of a mess. That's not the point. Then what's the problem? The problem. I didn't wait for Tad's answer. I pushed past mother-in-law and father-in-law's attempts to stop me and peered into the next room. Not here, so I headed upstairs. Despite some resistance and scraping my knee, it was nothing compared to Violet's pain. I can endure any wound for Violet. Breaking away from the in-laws and pushing past Tad, the moment I opened the door to an upstairs room, there they were. In the room, Nova and the child were sitting on the bed. Oh my, this woman and child are different from the photo. What does this mean? Tad turned pale, and Nova, confused by the photo, looked at us. Yes, it seems Tad was cheating on Violet. Here, look at this photo. I showed Nova the composite photo, and her face twisted in anger as she crumbled it. What is this? You had another woman? Wait, it's not like that. Nova, listen. Furious, Nova and pale, Haddad, I seized the opportunity. So you're another one of Tad's women. Mother-in-law and father-in-law, overwhelmed by the situation, were holding their heads. Why? You said I was the main one, so I agreed not to marry and have your child, and there's another woman. It's different, Nova. This is probably some misunderstanding, someone who looks similar or a composite. Probably. You can't say definitely not. I can't trust you. Nova's trust reached its peak as Tad, confused, failed to deny properly. Such an indecisive man isn't worth trusting. Violet had her life ruined by this man. Nova's face stiffened at my heavy advice. Although Nova also played a part in disrupting life, she probably knows this given her expression, so there's no need to say it. For now, I must act as if I'm on Nova's side to make sure she listens to my words, all for my goal of not letting the in-laws, Nova, or anyone else be happy. Yes, that's right, Nova muttered. Wait, Nova. I'm serious about you. Tad desperately tried to persuade Nova, but I interrupted. So you weren't serious about Violet but made vows in front of her? Tad, you're just not trustworthy. Nova's face clouded over at my words. It seemed she began to doubt whether what I was saying was sincere, especially with the composite photos in the mix. If you were really serious, you wouldn't have been two-timing in the first place. No matter the reason, you'd stick to one person. As I conspicuously repeated my words, Nova's face grew increasingly darker. Tad's face had turned completely pale. He must have felt Nova's feelings slipping away. Let's break up, Tad. I don't want to be just a convenient woman for you. After seeing those photos, I just can't believe you anymore. I can tolerate being the second woman, but certainly not the third. Tad, stunned by Nova's tears, pulled her hand and shouted, "Listen to me!" But Nova shook off his hand, saying, "I don't need acknowledgement anymore. Stay out of my life," and left the house with the child. Tad lost both the child and the woman he planned to marry, and as the in-laws sank into despair, I clenched my fist in triumph. Afterward, I made Tad write a termination of familial relations and cut ties with our family. Even Violet's inheritance, which Tad was supposed to receive, I made him relinquish. Our dad, who is quite imposing, went to the in-laws' house after hearing everything from me and protested. The in-laws, frightened, persuaded Tad. Just give up the inheritance. We don't want any more involvement with that house. It seems they persuaded Tad well. Even though Violet's inheritance was modest, I didn't want to give even an S of it to him. So that was good. Actually, on the day I took the photos to Tad's parents' home, one of the windows was open. As a result, our loud conversation was completely audible outside. That conversation, along with revelations from a friend of Nova's who lived nearby, spread throughout the neighborhood, and the in-laws' actions became well known. As a result, their house was rumored to have skewed morals. Tad quit his job and left the town with the in-laws as if fleeing. Meanwhile, about 2 months later, Nova suddenly appeared at our parents' home. She came to thank me for opening her eyes and wanted to apologize for her past behavior towards Violet, bringing $50,000 for the apology. I should have acknowledged Nova's feelings, but the pain Violet suffered couldn't be resolved with money. It didn't seem right for us to accept money for something the person herself couldn't forgive. I appreciate your gratitude, but I don't want money from someone who... I didn't accept it at all. Instead, I had her donate the money to a child welfare facility near where Violet worked. Worried if she would actually donate, of course, I accompanied her to ensure the donation was made. I'm sure Violet would be pleased with this use of the money. I hope those children will be happy for Violet's sake. On the other hand, it's embarrassing to admit, but I struggled to move on after losing Violet and even suffered from a mental breakdown. There was a time when it got so bad that I had to leave my job, but gradually I recovered. Now I'm working at Riley's investigation agency. Actually, after that incident, Riley and I became very close. We shared the experience of losing something precious, which I think made us understand each other. Despite my previous negative views on marriage due to what happened to Violet, I married my partner of 4 years last year. The pandemic and losing Violet made me realize how unpredictable life is, so I decided to take the step. I want to live without regrets, staying close to my loved ones as long as I can. Watch over me, Violet. I will live a long and full life for both of us. And when I get there, I'll tell you all the fun stories and things you didn't know. So, I'm going to keep living life energetically. Yeah.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.